dismantling Dodd-Frank's financial laws, overbearing mandates so that well-capitalized, well-regulated banks can meet the needs of small business, which is the engine of American job creation and prosperity.
Well, that, of course, Vice President Mike Pence talking about getting rid of all Dodd-Frank regulations on banks and unleashing American business. Joining us now, banking analyst Dick Bove. And Dick, would you agree with the Vice President?
Oh, I agree with him very definitely that we've got to get rid of regulation, but I don't think that they are thinking of regulation the way I do. You know, think about it. You know, there is a government agency that sets the price of money. There's a government agency that sets the quantity of money. And there's a government agency that steps in and tells banks how big they should be, where they should allocate their assets, how many loans they can make in a given sector, where they should borrow their money, who they should be taking their funding from in the long market versus the short market. And, you know, none of the deregulation talk that I've heard comes close to dealing with any of those issues. What they're dealing with is the periphery. They're dealing with things like, well, let's get rid of the Durbin Amendment, or let's let credit unions have a bigger say, or let's let small banks have a bigger piece of the action. So they're not going after the core issues of deregulation, which are really required.
Some of those issues that you mentioned sound like that would be great for the banks themselves, but how would that benefit the American public, which, by the way, has watched the Fed print a whole lot of money to buy crappy assets from banks who aren't seem very reluctant to pass on that money in the form of loans to Main Street?
It's not the banks, Charles. It's the regulations. In other words, the government goes to the banks and says, okay, we don't think you have enough long-term debt. Go borrow some money at 2.5%. Then they go to the banks and say, you don't have enough money invested in the Federal Reserve. Go put more money in the Federal Reserve and you'll get a yield of 50 basis points. So you get to borrow money at 2.5%, you get to lend it at 50 basis points. Great idea. Then the government comes to the banks and says, well, you know, you don't have enough high-quality liquid assets, which is another way of saying you're not giving enough money to the government. We want you to have 20 to 22% of your assets put into high-quality liquid assets. So the net effect is the government is telling the banks, you know, where they should put their money. Then they get into the loan portfolio, and if the bank says, well, I want to make a lot of commercial real estate loans, the government says, well, we don't want you to make too many commercial real estate loans.
Real quick, let me ask you about the loans, real quick. In the last Fed survey of senior lending managers, when banks were asked if they were making credit tougher for multifamily residents, almost 38% said yes. Why are they making it so much tougher for regular folks to get money when, you know, listen, business does have access to capital? And I mean, can at least the elimination of Dodd-Frank, to the degree that Vice President Pence was talking about, address that? Get the needle moving on the folks who want to start a family and buy a house.
Yeah, that's a lot of crap, okay? Basically, you know, what we're looking at is multifamily lending is a big business, right? And the problem with multifamily lending right now is that they're driving the prices of rentals up so fast that it costs more to rent a house than to buy one, right? The second factor is that, you know,
which means that there should be a sense of urgency to own a home, but banks won't make the loans, Dick.
The reason why they won't make the loans is something called the qualified mortgage regulations. The qualified mortgage regulations basically say, look, you know, if you make a loan to a guy who's low income and that guy doesn't make payments on the loan, the guy can sue you.
Right, that's the ability to pay. That's backfired. I got to ask you, because we're running out of time, about UBS. It's down today after they posted their profits, and you know, there's some questions, lingering questions about the tax crackdown, and is that hurting them? And some, you know, are they out of the woods?
The core problem is that they have a strategy which says we're going to grow this institution through wealth management and asset management. And in the fourth quarter, $15 billion walked out the door in wealth management and asset management. Well, if you set your main strategy to growing in those two areas and you lose money in those two areas, you got a problem.
Dick Bove, thank you very much. Always a pleasure.
All right, thank you.